Your thumb is hovering over send. It is the third message you have written her since the light came up, and she has not opened the first. Every word you add makes you weigh less. You tell yourself one more line will fix the silence. It will not. That is the part no one warns you about. The reaching is not what pulls people close. The reaching is what teaches them you can be reached without cost. You showed up first, always. You answered inside a minute. You explained yourself before anyone asked. You were the glue, and glue is the one thing a room forgets, is holding it together. Feel this instead. The day you stop sending is the day she looks up. The presence you begged for arrives the moment you stop begging. Not because absence is a trick, because your reaching was drowning out the man she would have missed. You have run the other experiment for years. You flooded every gap with effort. You made yourself easy, constant, safe, and you watched being easy get read as being optional. The more available you were, the more available you became. Furniture, load-bearing, and unseen. Carl Jung had a colder word for what you were doing. Not love, a merger. You had poured yourself into other people so completely that there was no shoreline left where you ended and they began. And a man with no shoreline cannot be missed, because he is already everywhere, spread thin across every chat he keeps warm. You feel the pull to send the third message anyway, to close the gap the way you always have. Do not. Set the phone face down with the words, Unsent. Watch what the silence does. It is about to do more than your paragraphs ever could. Not to punish her. The quiet is the first honest thing you have said to her in a year. Look at who you had become before that morning. You were the first reply in every thread. The one who confirmed plans nobody else confirmed. The friend who drove across the city because someone sounded low at midnight. You called it being dependable. It was quieter than that. It was fear wearing the mask of kindness, because dependable men do not feel dependable inside. They feel one missed reply away from being dropped. So you never missed one. You answered fast to prove you were worth keeping. You over-explained so no one could misread you into leaving. You made yourself the easiest person in every room, and easy is not the same as valued. Easy is the price of admission you paid alone, every single day. They took it, of course. People take what is offered. She let you carry the thread because you always had. The group let you plan the nights because planning was your job now. Unpaid, unthanked, assumed. Nobody was cruel. That is the trap. No villain ever tells the glue it is being used. The room simply leans, and the glue holds, and holding gets mistaken for having no needs of your own. You felt it, though. You felt the small burn whenever you sent the long message and got back a thumbs up. You felt the flinch when the plans you built happened without a word of thanks. You swallowed it. You told yourself a real man does not keep score. So the score kept itself, silently, in the tightness behind your ribs. Jung would say you had handed your center to the crowd. Every yes you did not mean was a coin off the pile of who you were. And a man spends that pile quietly, for years, until one gray morning he reaches for himself and finds the vault empty. That morning is where this turns. So ask the harder question. Why did you reach like that? Not because you loved them more than most men love. Because a silence, to you, felt like a verdict. An unanswered message was not an unanswered message. It was proof, arriving slowly, that you were forgettable. That belief did not start with her. It started young, in a house where warmth came when you were useful and went cold when you were not. You learned the equation early. Be needed or be gone. So you became needed everywhere, and you called the exhaustion loyalty. Jung had a name for the thing driving you from underneath. The shadow. The part of you that you refused to look at, so it drove the wheel in the dark. Your shadow was not rage or lust. Yours was the terror of being left. You had buried it so deep that you no longer felt it as fear. You felt it as helpfulness. Every fast reply was that buried boy, still bargaining, still saying, "Please do not go," in the only language he was ever allowed to speak. The hidden fear does one thing above all. It leaks. People cannot always name it, but they feel it. They feel the neediness under the niceness. They feel the ask hiding inside the favor. That is why the reaching repelled the very closeness it begged for. You were not sending messages. You were sending the smell of fear, and no one moves toward that. The woman who kept you at arm's length was not confused. She was reading you correctly. She felt a man who would abandon himself to keep her, and a man who abandons himself is not a man anyone respects. You cannot value what someone throws at your feet for free. She could not either. Not because she was cruel. Because that is how the human eye works. We lean toward what stands and away from what leans. Picture the last night before it broke. You had spent the evening crafting a message to her. 3 paragraphs, careful, warm, a little too honest. You read it 4 times. You softened the part that sounded like a need. You sent it. Then you watched the 2 gray ticks and waited for the blue. Nothing. An hour of nothing. You checked whether she had posted anywhere else. She had. Something light and careless, put up while your paragraphs sat unread. You felt the floor tilt. You started typing the follow-up, the one that pretends it was no big deal, the one that lets her off a hook you never even set. Casual, breezy, a lie dressed as ease. That follow-up is the tell. The whole pattern lives inside that one moment. You had made yourself so afraid of your own need that you would apologize for having it before she even declined it. You would erase your ask to spare her the discomfort of turning you down. And a man who erases himself that fast teaches everyone around him that he can be erased. She had not decided you did not matter. Worse, she had never had to decide because you kept the question open for her, endlessly, for free. You were the standing offer she could take or leave, and standing offers do not get chosen. They get remembered when convenient and forgotten when not. Group was the same shape. The plans you built ran without your name on them. The check-ins you sent came back in single words. You were the sun everyone warmed under and no one looked at. And you kept shining, harder, brighter, sure that if you just gave a little more, the looking would finally come. It would not have, not on that road. The giving was the problem, not the cure. Something had to break, and the next morning, quietly, without a speech, it did. The morning it turned, nothing dramatic happened. That is what people get wrong about the change that matters. There was no confrontation, no final speech, no burning of bridges. There was only a man, worn in a way sleep does not touch, looking at an unsent message and choosing, for once, not to send it. You did not hold back out of strategy. You were too tired for strategy. You simply could not perform the eagerness one more day. So the paragraph sat there, thumb-shaped and unsent, and you set the phone face down on the table. And the strangest thing happened in your own chest. Quiet. Not the loud quiet of sulking. The clean quiet of a man who has stopped auditioning. That is the day the arc bends. Not the day she changed, The day you stopped narrating yourself to people who were not reading. You had spent years as your own press agent, explaining, justifying, softening, updating everyone on the state of you. And that morning, the broadcast simply went dark. You expected to feel like you were losing them. You braced for the panic of the drop. It did not come. Instead, you felt the outline of yourself return, faint at first, like blood coming back into an arm you had slept on. There was a shape to you again. A man has a shape only where he keeps something back. The first hour was the hardest. Your hand reached for the phone the way the tongue reaches for a missing tooth. You wanted to check, to fix, to fill the gap with effort the way you always had. You did not. You let the gap stay a gap. And in that small refusal, one unsent message, one unchecked screen, you did something you had not done in years. You let another person feel your absence. You had no idea yet what your absence was worth. You were about to find out, so was she. What you found in the days after was that the withdrawal was not one grand act. It was 100 small ones, each a rep, each a chance to abandon yourself again or hold. And the reps are simple enough to name, which is exactly why they are hard. The first rep. You write the third message and you delete it. Not the first. The first is fair. The third is the one that begs. The third is the one that says, I need you to answer more than I respect myself. And your thumb knows the difference even when your heart pretends it does not. Write it if you must. Then delete it. Let the two you already sent be enough, because a man who sends a third has already told the truth about who is chasing whom. The second rep. You leave the call without the last word. You feel the pull to add one more line, to seal it, to make sure you landed well, to check that they are not upset. You do not. You let the goodbye be slightly unfinished. You hang up first, sometimes, and you sit with the itch of the unsealed ending. That itch is the sound of your center coming back online. The third rep. They finally ask why you have gone quiet. You do not explain. This is the hardest one. Every cell in you wants to hand over the report. Here is what I felt. Here is why I stepped back. Here is the receipt for my pain. You give none of it. You say little. You let the silence keep its meaning instead of trading it away for their comfort. Explained boundary is a boundary asking permission. You stop asking. None of these are punishments. Read that twice. You are not going quiet to wound anyone. You are going quiet because the noise you made was never really speech. It was static, and you are finally letting the signal through. Then she noticed. That is the part you could never have scripted, because it did not come from anything you did. It came from something you stopped doing. 4 days of your silence, and the woman who left your paragraphs unread sent the first message she had sent first in months. 3 words. You okay? Read what just happened. For a year you reached, and reaching moved nothing. 4 days of absence, and she reached back. The lever was never in your asking. The lever was in your leaving. Everything you tried to earn by pressing forward arrived the instant you stepped back. Not because women are cruel or games are clever, because presence only has weight when absence is possible. You had removed the possibility. You had made yourself a constant, and no one thanks the air. Now she felt the room change temperature. The glue was not answering. The sun she never looked at had dropped below the ridge, and suddenly the cold was interesting. She was not in love with your effort. She was unsettled by your gravity, the new quiet fact that you might actually be able to walk away. That is a different thing entirely. and it is the only thing that ever pulls a person back. You did not gloat. You did not screenshot it to a friend. You felt something steadier and sadder than triumph. You realized that all those years of chasing had taught her you were safe to ignore, and 4 days of stillness had taught her you were not. The whole balance had lived, the whole while, in your willingness to disappear. If you have ever been the glue that a room forgot it was leaning on, subscribe. Because everything here is built to hand you back the man you gave away. She was coming back. The test was not whether she would. It was whether you had become someone who no longer needed her to. Sit with what her 3 words revealed, because it is bigger than her. The power was never in your plea. You had proof now, cold and clear. 1,000 words of asking had produced nothing. A stretch of genuine absence had produced her. Which means the whole score you had been trying to win by effort was, the whole while, decided by the one thing you refused to spend. Your capacity to be gone. This is where most men take the wrong lesson. They feel the rush of her return and they think they have found a technique. Go quiet, and they come running. So they start performing absence the way they used to perform presence. They stare at the phone, staging their silence, waiting for it to work, checking whether it has worked yet. And it fails, every single go, because it is the same disease with new symptoms. A man staging his absence is still a man organizing his life around her reaction. Your shadow will try this. It is clever. It will take the one real thing you did, coming home to yourself, and try to bend it back into a lever for her. It will whisper that silence is a weapon, and she is the target. The moment you believe that, you have left yourself again. You are back in the merger, just standing further away. The truth is harder and quieter. Her return only mattered because you had stopped needing it to happen. The absence worked because it was not a trick. It was real. You actually had somewhere else to be, and that somewhere was inside your own life, which you had abandoned to sit outside hers. Rebuild the trick, and you rebuild the cage. Keep the realness, and you keep the man. So when she came back, you did not pounce. You did not punish. You met her from the new ground, and you noticed, almost with grief, how much lighter her pull had become now that you had yourself to return to. The turn that changes everything is not the one you think. You believed the story was about her coming back. It never was. The real event was not her return. It was that a man appeared for her to return to. A man who, months earlier, did not exist. You had been so dissolved into everyone that there was no one home. The silence did not simply push her away and reel her in. The silence built the person. Jung called this individuation, the slow, deliberate work of becoming a self that is whole instead of scattered. Of gathering back all the pieces of you that you had loaned out to be liked. Every fast reply had been a loan. Every over-explanation, a piece of you left in someone else's pocket. Withdrawal was not you leaving the world. It was you calling your pieces home. This is the reframe, so let it land fully. What you called losing them was you being formed. The ache you felt when you stopped reaching was not the ache of abandonment. It was the ache of a boundary growing where there had never been one. A raw, tender edge where you finally ended and other people began. It hurt because it was new tissue. It hurt because it was real. A man without that edge cannot love anyone. He can only merge with them, dissolve into them, and quietly resent them for taking what he never stopped giving. But a man with an edge, a man who can say no, go quiet, walk out of the call unfinished, that man can finally choose people instead of clinging to them. and being chosen by a whole man is a different order of thing than being clung to by an empty one. She felt that difference before she could name it. Everyone does. We can smell a shoreline. We move toward the man who has one, because next to him, we finally know where we stand. So the practice cannot stay a technique. It has to become a place you actually live. The reps you started with, the deleted third message, the unfinished goodbye, the unexplained quiet, those were the door. What matters is what you walk into once it opens. And what you walk into is your own abandoned life. 'Cause here is why your absence used to be fake. You had nowhere to go. When you stepped back from her, you stepped into an empty room and stared at the phone. Of course you caved. Anyone would. A man with no life of his own cannot withdraw. He can only sulk near the exit, waiting to be called back in. Real withdrawal needs somewhere real to withdraw to, so you build it. Quietly, without announcement. You pick up the thing you dropped when you made other people your whole occupation. The training you quit, the work you kept putting second, the friendships you let go thin because chasing her ate the hours. You pour back into your own ground what you used to pour into theirs, not to make them jealous. They are not even the point anymore. That is how you know it is working. The moment they stop being the point. The new rep is this. When the urge to check the phone rises, you do not just resist it. You replace it. Put the reaching hand on the barbell, on the page, on the work, on the friend who actually answers. You give the energy a truer home than the gray ticks. And slowly, the phone loses its gravity, because you have built a heavier planet to stand on. This is the difference no technique can fake. A staged silence is a man staring at a closed door. True silence is a man who has walked down the hall into a room full of his own life and cannot hear the knocking anymore because he is finally, fully occupied with becoming himself. The test comes on a quiet night, and it looks like tenderness. She comes back warm, warmer than she has been in a year. She is soft. She is present. She is finally giving you the thing you starved for. And every old wire in you lights up at once. This is it. This is the reward. Reach now. Pour it all back out. Send the paragraph. Explain everything. Collapse gratefully into the merger you just crawled out of. That night is the whole war. Not the withdrawal. The withdrawal was easy compared to this. Anyone can hold a boundary against someone who is cold. The real test is holding yourself when they turn warm, because warmth is the exact key your shadow was cut for. Warmth is when the old man wakes up and reaches for the wheel. Feel how badly you want to overgive in that moment. That craving is not love. Look straight at it. It is relief. The relief of the boy who thinks he has finally been let back in and who will pay any price to stay. He wants to hand her everything again just to make sure the warmth does not leave. And the instant he does, it will. Because she did not come back for the flood. She came back for the man who had damned it. So you hold, not coldly. You receive her warmth without spending yourself to keep it. You stay kind and you stay whole at once, which is the hardest posture a man ever learns. You let the goodbyes stay a little unfinished even now. You keep one room of yourself that she cannot enter just by being sweet for a night. That is not you being guarded. That is you being real. The old you would have emptied the vault at the first smile and been forgotten by the weekend. The new you keeps the vault, and the strange thing is, she leans closer to the locked door than she ever did to the open one. Now, hear the thing that keeps this from turning you into someone worse. Because there is a wrong version of everything you just learned, and men fall into it constantly. They taste the power of the boundary and they overcorrect into a wall. They decide people are the problem. They pull the drawbridge, call it strength, and slowly become islands that mistake loneliness for freedom. That is not what any of this was for. Withdrawal was never about needing no one. A man who needs no one is not whole. He is wounded in the opposite direction, still organized entirely around other people, just with the sign flipped from "Please stay" to "Stay away." The hermit and the chaser are the same man. Both let the crowd decide their shape, one by clinging, one by fleeing. Neither is home. Individuation does not end in a fortress. It ends in a man who can be close without dissolving. That is the whole point. You went quiet not so you could live without people, but so you could finally live among them as a self instead of a stain. You wanted to be able to sit across from her, to love her even, without leaking away into her, without needing her reply to know you exist. The withdrawal was the training. Connection was always the goal. So you come back to people. You do. But you come back with an edge. You answer when you mean it, not when you are afraid. You give because you have plenty, not because you are buying safety. You let people in through a door you can also close, and a door you can close is the only door worth having, because a room that cannot be shut is not a home. It is a hallway everyone walks through. The chaser gave everything and was taken for granted. The wall gives nothing and is left alone. The whole man gives from choice and is, at last, actually met. Step back and look at how many men are living the life you just left. Look at the one who answers every message inside a minute and wonders why no one respects him. The one who plans every gathering and is never quite invited to the ones he did not plan. The one who over-explains in every meeting, every text, every apology, and cannot understand why the room keeps looking past him. They are all doing the same thing you did. They are reaching and being taken for granted for it, and reaching harder in response. It is the quiet epidemic of the dependable man. He is everywhere. He is the friend who always drives, the partner who always initiates, the colleague who always covers. He is praised in the shallow way you praise a tool, and dropped the moment a shinier one appears. And he cannot see the pattern because the pattern is dressed as virtue. No one tells you that your kindness has become a way of disappearing. They just quietly use the exit you keep holding open. The cruelty of it is that these are often the best men. The most loyal, the most giving, the ones with the most to offer. And they are overlooked precisely because they offer it too freely, with no shoreline, no cost, no edge. The world does not value what it cannot lose. And the dependable man has made himself impossible to lose, so he has made himself impossible to value. If you recognize yourself in this, understand that the fix is not to give less because you have grown bitter. It is to give from a self that exists, that has weight, that could walk away. The same gift lands completely differently depending on whether the giver has a shoreline. From a whole man, a favor is generosity. From an empty one, it is a plea. Same act. Opposite meaning, the only variable is whether there is a man behind it. Come back, finally, to that unsent message. The one your thumb hovered over at the start, the third of the morning. The one you did not send. That small refusal was the hinge the whole life turned on. Not because it made her chase you. Because it was the first moment in years that you chose yourself over the fear of being forgettable. Everything after was built on that one held breath. You are a different man on this side of it. The phone does not run you anymore. Silence no longer reads as a verdict on your worth. It is just a silence, and you have a whole life to fill it with. When someone pulls back, you do not unravel and flood the gap with effort. You let the gap exist. You have learned that the gap is where your shape lives. She is still around, or she is not. That was never really the measure. Measure is that you no longer need to know, moment by moment, whether you are wanted. You carry your own answer now. You became someone who can be missed because you finally became someone who can leave. And a man who can leave is the only man whose staying means anything. This is what Jung was pointing at the whole way down. A trick to make them panic. A path to becoming someone whole enough that the panic, when it comes, does not even move you. They took you for granted when there was nothing there to take. They cannot take a man for granted once he has a center they can feel and cannot control. So delete the third message. Leave the call with the last word unsaid. Let them wonder why you have gone quiet and do not explain. Not to win them. To find the one person you abandoned every go-round you chased them. He has been waiting the entire while for you to stop sending and start becoming. Answer him first.